Well, the teenager accused of the deadly Apalachee High School shooting is expected to take a plea deal and be sentenced this week.
Two students, 14-year-olds Christian Angelo and Mason Schermerhorn, and teachers Richard Aspinwall and Christina Earmy were all killed. 9 others were hurt in that September 2024 attack. And Colt Gray is accused of being the shooter. He initially pleaded not guilty, and a trial had been set to happen this fall. But now, according to court documents, he is expected to enter a non-negotiated plea deal on Friday. That's when both sides present their case and sentencing recommendations to the judge, who will then make a final decision. Gray's father, Colt Gray, was already found guilty of giving his son access that officials say was used in the access to the gun, that officials say was used in the shooting, and he faces up to 180 years in prison and will be sentenced later this month.